I get people asking me all the time what the best parts are for a range of different PC build budgets. And while I try and cover as many price points as possible in dedicated build guides here on the channel, it's not always possible to cover every base, nor is it always possible to show the transition, how I would progress from say an $800 build through to one that costs $1,000 or $1,200. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be recommending my best builds for the month of July and August 2024, and covering off, crucially, the areas I would prioritize when moving from an entry-level to mid-range build, or from a mid-range to high-end system. Let's do this. Supercharge your gaming experience with Zotac RTX 40 series GPUs. Powered by the ultra-efficient Ada Lovelace architecture, with support for NVIDIA DLSS 3.5 and of course full ray tracing, what's not to love? Zotac's range features their Ice Storm 2.0 advanced cooling technology and Spectra RGB lighting, which you can customize in software. A metal backplate, high build quality and 3+2 year warranty that extends to 5 years total with registration, gives you peace of mind now and into the future. Check them out at the first links in the description below. I'm going to be using Newegg today to get up-to-date part pricing for everything. Be aware that prices are changing all the time, meaning some stuff may have gone up and some stuff may have gone down, but I'll leave latest pricing and availability links in the description below. For my UK viewers, these builds convert pretty much one-to-one when you take into account sales taxes and exchange rates. An $800 build is roughly about £800. Now, for an $800 build, we want to spend about $400 probably on the CPU and GPU combo, but that isn't where I'm going to start. Instead, I'm going to start with everything else. Why? Because that's going to show me exactly how much cash is left for those crucial performance-based components. Now, in terms of those other components, let's start off with storage. Super budget build, couple of compromises. I want to pick up a 500GB NVMe SSD. Something like Crucial's P3 Plus, TeamGroup's MP33, or on the higher end, something like the WD Black SN770. I also would recommend going for a PCI Gen 4 drive in all of the builds today. That's going to give us a bit more performance and help to keep things a bit more current, and I'm even going to search by best selling too. Looking at the best options then that satisfy all of this criteria, and Crucial's P3 Plus looks like a winner. It's one of the cheaper drives available, $44 for the 500GB. Looking at the 1TB, that's going to be $72. I have seen it cheaper, but for this build, 500 gigs is going to be a-okay. With this being a budget build, the likelihood is we're going to be using DDR4 memory. Preferably, I'd like 32GB, but I'm not sure we're going to have the cash for that. So instead, I'm going to go for a 16GB kit first of all, and see what's left at the end. This TeamGroup T4's Vulcan is a great option if you're not bothered about RGB, as it saves you some money compared to some of the clearly more expensive options on the market. Look at this T-Force Delta, 32 gigs, but it's $70. And similarly, this Corsair Vengeance kit, again, only 16 gigs, and that's going to set you back $50. Moving through to PC cases, and I don't want to spend more than $60, but I want something with included fans and with a nice aesthetic. These DIYPC chassis always seem pretty popular, and I can see why. And similarly, Sama is a very popular budget brand that clearly take a bit of inspiration from some of the other higher end cases on the market. Looking at the options, and there's clearly two distinct choices here. The DIY PC case looks better, is more inspired by the Lee & Lee 011 style, but obviously at a much cheaper price, while the Sama version features one more fan and of course is $10 cheaper. Personally, as much as I'd like to try and keep a lid on the budget, I think it's nice to have a case that looks good. And while this is certainly not the most high quality thing I've ever seen in my life, I think it's going to work for the build today quite nicely. As far as power is concerned, also want to get something about 650 watts. The reason for that is because 500 just really isn't enough, especially when you start to throw upgrades in there. I'm predicting the GPU is going to be in the region of 200 watts, the CPU is going to be probably 65, 70. So with your headroom, with your efficiency factored in and everything else, 650 I think feels about right to me. Now looking at the best selling options, you've got the EVGA unit here, that's 75, that's very pricey in my experience, and I know we can do a bit better. Moving the price limit to $65 or below, and this Thermaltake Smart BX1 has caught my eye. Now it's not perfect, it's not modular, meaning you don't get to plug in the cables you need, you've got that. Not particularly user-friendly cable mesh to try and manage, but it's 80 plus bronze certified, it's got a 5-year warranty, and in our experience, Thermaltake power supplies are actually really, really solid. Now that brings us up to apparently only $200. We're doing well so far with the case, memory, storage, and of course the PSU2. $204.87 to be precise. Now with this being a budget build, I think CPU are going to have to make a compromise. Preferably, I'd like the Ryzen 7600. I think this is the best entry-level 6-core 12-thread chip, but at $200, that is quite pricey. It's also going to need pricier DDR5 memory, which to be honest, the build budget just doesn't have much room for. Intel's Core i5-12400F is a winner though. It's still 6 cores, has worse clock speeds, and does consume, it's quite power hungry, 117 watts at turbo, but the power supply I think is going to be more than sufficient. So I'm definitely going to go for that in the build today. With this being Intel LGA, we need an LGA 1700 motherboard. I'm thinking a B760 or B660 design is going to be what we want. You could go lower end and go for the A series chipset, but personally I'd rather not. I want to keep some of those features and some of that better connectivity. Again, I'm going to search by best selling, and I don't really want to spend more than about $100, $110. Something like this B760M DS3H has caught my eye straight away. We've used this a lot on the channel and been consistently impressed with it, so I can recommend it from the point of view of a build like this. ASRock brings a slightly lower price point in with this quite nice white board. Moving down the list a bit further, and things don't seem to be getting much cheaper. So I'm going to opt for this Gigabyte board based on my personal strong experiences with it in the past. So I'm going to add that straight to the cart. That lands us at $424, giving about $375 left for the GPU. This is looking good. Now $375, instantly I'm thinking, can we get a 7700 XT in? $399 seems to be the lowest price for 7700 XTs. Now the next one down would be AMD's RX 7600 XT, but that's a bit VRAM constrained. Well, fine for 1080p, it's not my favorite GPU. Well, the RTX 4060 is perhaps the next best option. The only other thing I can think of is AMD's last generation RX 6750 XT. Can we get that for $375-ish? Yes, we can. XFX have got this Speedster for $349. However, it looks a bit long, so that's something definitely to check. Your GPU and your case, you want to make sure there's enough sufficient clearance. So that's 323 millimeters. So let's copy that and chuck that in the cart. Remember, something like Newegg's not like PC Part Picker. It's not going to do this check-in and due diligence for you, so be careful. 322 millimeters is what we need. Is this going to give us, yes, support for 360mm VGAs with no front fans? That metric should be a-okay. So if you're looking then to build a system for apparently $769, nice, this is what I'd go for. This DIYPC case, Gigabyte's B760 DS3H, an XFX 6750 XT or 7700 XT if you've got the budget, as well as a Smart 650 from Thermaltake, i5-12400F, P3 Plus 500 gig. Arguably you could fit the 1TB in budget, and TeamGroup's TeamGroup's T-Force Vulcan Z 16 gigs. I'm obviously used to saying T-Force Delta. Now if I was going to step this up to the $1,000 price point, what would I do? Now to be honest with you, probably not a lot that's going to massively improve performance. I would rather spend the extra money moving to a newer platform. That's going to mean ditching the B760 motherboard and ditching the i5-12400F. I'm also going to upgrade the SSD to the 1TB P3 Plus, as I think that is certainly a worthy upgrade at $73. Add that to the cart. Well, I'm also going to drop in AMD's Ryzen 5 7600 Non-X, which should come in at about $189. I say $199 at the moment. I've seen that cheaper, so definitely could save a little bit of money there, as well as an entry-level B650 motherboard. So we want to find something in the region of about $120 that's B650. It looks like Gigabyte went out again with their B650 D3HP. No Wi-Fi, so watch out for that. You may want to spend a bit extra and get that included, but that's going to push us onto the AM5 socket, which in my mind is a much better platform to live on. Having done so also means we're going to need some more memory. Personally, I think 16 gigs is just arguably not enough anyway, and of course we've got our extra 500 gig drive, so let's boot that out. That gives us $140 or so, which sounds about perfect for a 32GB DDR5 kit and a small GPU upgrade. Looking at the best sellers, with a cache latency of 31 to 40, and again T-Force's Vulcan, but this time the DDR5 kit seems to win out. So let's pop that in the cart and swap the GPU out from the 6750 XT to a 7700 XT. That brings the whole build in at just over $1,000, $1,010, with a slightly better GPU, more modern architecture, more up-to-date motherboard and CPU, and DDR5 rather than DDR4 memory, with a bit of extra storage too. So although the gaming performance is maybe only, say, 10 or 15% better, the quality of life features in the rest of the build are arguably far improved. Now for $1,200, how again would I spend this cash? Personally, a small case upgrade I think would be useful. Similarly, the motherboard we can go slightly better on without throwing all those cost savings away. I'd also like to knock up to the Ryzen 5 7600X for slightly faster out-of-box clock speeds. If you're comfortable overclocking, arguably this is a bit of cash you don't need to spend. So let's find that Ryzen 5 7600X instead. Price-wise, that's coming in actually cheaper than the non-X version for some reason. So that's actually a cost saving. If you're doing this $1,000 build I talked about, maybe get this one too if you're buying right now. Latest pricing, link below. B650 wise, I think the best bet at the moment, used in a few builds recently, is actually this B650 Eagle AX. And then as far as cases are concerned, we want to jump up to that full-size standard ATX form factor. So again, let's see what some of our best-selling options are, with an overall budget of, I would say, around about $100. I'm going to put in 120 just so that if there are some discounts or some rebates, that is taken into account. That's really, really nice. This Phanteks XT Pro Ultra, like that a lot. And you can see with the rebate, again, $69. So not a huge extra cost over what we had in there before. That brings me in at 1,050 with everything included. So again, what would I change? I do think I want to pick up a CPU cooler, something like Vectru's V5. This is going to take the edge off when it comes to temperatures and make the audible output of the system quieter, which is always important. Again, that's only a $25 upgrade. That then leaves an extra $200-ish for the GPU. So let's remove the 7700 XT and see where we land. So yeah, $525, give or take. Now, is the 7900 GRE going to be palatable for that price? It's looking like it could be close. 549 MSRP. The cheapest is 529. This could be perfect. This is going to deliver you far better performance at 1440p. It competes with NVIDIA's 4070 Super, a GPU that, just for reference, costs, I want to say about $599, $600. Yep, bang on $599, $639, arguably slightly more, and puts the build at $1,205.75, including shipping. So again, if you've got a $1,200 build, I'd go for the Phanteks XT Pro Ultra, Gigabyte's B650 Eagle AX, one of my favorite B650 boards, a 7900 GRE, that's 650 watt PSU, might want notching up to a 750, so I would do that just to be safe, with 32 gigabytes of DDR5, a crucial P3 Plus, and AMD's Ryzen 5 7600X, cooled by the Vectru V5. So that would be my $1,200 build. But what if you want to go all out and you want to spend $2,000? How much can you get for that extra $800? Now, this is all about balance. Some things I would suggest can stay, like this Gigabyte B650 Eagle AX. The reason being is that AMD's 7800X3D would actually be my go-to CPU choice, and that's not really an overclockable chip anyway. So a lower-end B650 motherboard with more limited power delivery and limited overclocking, it's going to be fine. The RAM arguably as well is okay, but I think we can go for a kit with a bit more wow factor. So a 32GB DDR5 RGB kit is what I'm going to go for. Again, we want a CL in the region of about 36 to optimize for performance. Could this Corsair kit be the one? CL36, DDR5 6000, good stuff. I'm also going to upgrade the case, I think, as well. Something a little bit more wow is what I'm going for. And you can find my favorite cases in a recent best cases video on the channel now. I'll link that in the card section above. Now again, $120 is about where I'd like to be. And you can see there are really an absolute huge mass of options to choose from at this price point. Sama seem to be like, I don't want to say like a knockoff brand, but they're obviously taking some inspiration at a budget price point, and some of this stuff is really impressive. I'm a big fan though of the Montech King 95, and I wonder if for our $1,000 price point, we can squeeze one of these in. Now the Pro is $149, but the normal King 95 is down to $79 with the Newegg Plus member exclusive price. So I'm going to add that in. You will need to buy your own fans, but again, I think you can do that fairly cheap with a nice 6-pack of Amazon or Newegg to keep you going. I would recommend a 2TB NVMe for a $2,000 build. The reason being is you're going to have more games, you know, nowadays 70, 80, 100, 120 gig, depending on the title. I wouldn't go as far to say the 990 Pro is where I'm going to be, but there are, I think, some more perhaps price competitive options that could be considered instead. This SN770 here is a pretty decent drive, and for the 2TB model is about 140. That looks good to me. Let me cross-reference that against one or two others. I like Lexar's NM790. That you can see here for the 2TB drive is about 150 and delivers considerably more speed. 7.5 on the read, 6.5 on the write. A good CPU cooler is next up. I'm going to think about maybe getting a 240mm AIO. We're not going to be overclocking, so we haven't got to go stupid, but I think the liquid cooled advantage of a cooler and quieter CPU is what we want. So here we go. Cooler Master currently have their ML240L core. This is quite nice for $85, but $10 off with that promo code. So again, I'm going to pop that in the cart. You aren't going to get much better than that, not in the current climate. All that then leaves is the GPU, but first a power supply. Let's not count our chickens before they've hatched. Let's see how much is left after the PSU. I'm going to go for an 850 watt unit. Again, Thermaltake seem to top the charts. This is their 2024 model GF1, and it's 80 plus gold, ultra quiet. The only thing it isn't is ATX3. So if you're going for an NVIDIA GPU, you might want that for that PCI Gen 5 power cable. I'm going to add that for now. We can always change it out later if we wish. And of course, I can leave some alternative options linked down below for PCI Gen 5 too. That then leaves, I think, about $1,000 for the GPU. Straight away then, that's two obvious choices. The RTX 4080 Super is the first. That's going to clock in for the cheapest model on Newegg right now at, not an open box, want a brand new model. Obviously, if you're willing for open box, you can save some cash. This Tough Gaming one is temporarily out of stock because of high demand, but it's the cheapest. The MSI Ventus is the next at $1,029. Let's see what the 7900 XTX is like from AMD. Personally, I'd much rather the 4080 Super. I think that ray tracing, DLSS at the high end do make a lot more sense. That's going to be more in budget, but I'm going to be honest with you, we're going to break the rules. We're going RTX 4080 Super. We want to push things a little bit further and get that slightly better 4K gaming performance. If I can spell RTX 4080 Super. Now then, price low to high, I think we're going to go for the Ventus card. I much prefer personally the design of the Tough. I think it's just a slightly nicer overall model, but obviously it's out of stock and I don't want to recommend you guys something you can't buy. In fact, this PMY one was hiding. That looks to be in stock and it looks quite nice. Plus $20 off puts it in at about $979. We might actually, you know, be in budget. Can you believe it? James has done a PC build video and he's in $5 out of budget. That's enough for me. That's a very small margin of error. So if you've got $2,000 to spend, you are going to need some fans for the King 95 if that's what you choose to go for. But King 95 case, again, the B650 Eagle AX, arguably a slight weak point, but I think would be totally fine. 4080 Super from PMY with an 850 watt 80 plus gold power supply. This is Thermaltake's GF1. Corsair's Vengeance, 32 gigs of DDR5. While I've also added in a 240mm cooler from Cooler Master, 2TB NM790 and a Ryzen 7800 X3D. So if you've got then $800, $1,000, $1,200, $2,000 to spend, this is what I'd recommend, and I'll leave them all linked in the description below. You can also find our full range of dedicated PC build guides with detailed benchmarks and our videos on the best CPUs and GPU combos, where you'll be able to see the kind of indicative performance on offer from the components recommended in today's video. Heck, why not even check out GeekaWhat.com for the latest tech reviews and BIOS guides too. If you enjoyed this one, get subscribed. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.